Allow me to pimp introduce myself. For those of you unfamiliar with me, I am the God-anointed, game-appointed gentleman by the name of Freeze is It. Letting this game swan dive off my tongue, moonwalk on your ear, and slide off into your mind one time. Now, I know a lot of you listen to a lot of rappers, and you take on what the rappers say as gospel, and you think that what the rappers say is representative of the people who live certain lifestyles. Like, for instance, back in the day, Snoop Dogg said, "I don't love you hoes." He portrayed himself to be a pimp in a lot of his music, you dig? But I'm here to give you a revelation, give you a paradigm shift, and let you know that pimps, contrary to popular belief, really do love their hoes. You know, if you really think about it, if you think about it from a logical standpoint, it's kind of impossible for a true pimp to not love his hoes. You dig? I know most of us in American culture, we grow up with this understanding that love is exclusive to squares. You dig? This is how most of us come up in the square culture. So most of us are raised as squares. Now, a lot of us who come off into the pimp and hoe lifestyle, we adopt a lot of things according to that culture. But one thing that isn't really expressed clearly is the love between a pimp and a hoe, because we come into the game with the understanding, okay, my mom loves my dad, my auntie loves my uncle, my grandma loves my grandpa. So when we hear the word love, we automatically use that as our point of reference. But Freeze is here to let you know that love is not exclusive to squares. You dig? Now, of course, the love between a square husband and wife, or boyfriend and girlfriend, or whatever the case may be, you know, it has a different dynamic to it than that of a pimp and a hoe, but it's still love between a pimp and a hoe nonetheless. I mean, if you really think about it, okay, especially in today's times, right? 2017, for a pimp to even get involved with a hoe, he's involving himself in a potentially dangerous situation, a potentially risky situation. You know, his freedom might be on the line, his well-being, his life. There's a lot of things that might be on the line with involving himself with this hoe or these hoes. You did. So coming into a situation like that, and then from that point, dealing with that person on a daily basis for sometimes years. A lot of pimps and hoes stay together for years. Honestly, my personal experience has been, I've seen more pimp and hoe relationships last longer than square husband and wife, boyfriend and girlfriend relationships, especially in today's times, you dig? I just see that and it's just my experience, but my experience has been that there's a stronger loyalty between pimps and hoes. So when you do all this, for a pimp to go to that extent with a hoe, he has to trust her. He might not want to use that terminology because a lot of pimps, you know, they go off the stigma of, you know, I don't trust these hoes. A pimp ain't supposed to trust his hoes. Pimp ain't supposed to love his hoes. This, that, and the third. But see, a true pimp is going to come to his own mind. He's going to come to his own thinking. He might initially get into the game thinking, I'm not supposed to trust these hoes. I'm not supposed to love these hoes. But if he's an independent thinker who has his own mind, he's going to eventually grow to the level of maturity to have the right type of understanding that, yeah, a lot of people might not call it love, but if you look at the deeds, if you look at the actions, it's representative of love. You know, because like I say, for a pimp to entrust this woman with his freedom, she can potentially juggle his freedom any type of way that she wants to. She can potentially juggle his well-being any type of way that he wants to. or that she wants to, rather, excuse me. So, and then beyond that, they're making all these different types of sacrifices for one another, because the pimping is making a sacrifice there by entrusting her with, like I say, his freedom and his well-being. The hoe, on the other end, is entrusting the pimp herself, you know, not just with the money, but leadership, guidance, you know, ultimately just as a leader overall. She's entrusting the pimping with that. You dig? And then she's going out making sacrifices on a daily basis herself. So people can call it what they want, but me, myself, I have the understanding that pimps do love hoes. You dig? Like I said, based on my experience from what I've seen, you know, you will have some pimps that will admit that they love hoes. But and see, this is a difference between pimp and hoe love and square love. See, squares, their love drives them to do different types of things based on their understanding, just like pimps and hoe love drives them to do different things. Like a square might try to get violent with somebody if somebody else infringes on that love. If somebody tries to come between the love between a husband and the wife might try to kill everybody, or the husband might try to kill everybody. You dig? Whereas pimp and hoe love is different. You dig? Because it's not an exclusive type of relationship like how a square relationship is. You know, for a good point of reference for most of you watching, I'll say the pimp and hoe relationship is more polygamous than anything, because it involves more than one woman and more than one man. The only difference is the man is actually paying for the woman's time and companionship for a limited amount of time. You dig? So, you know, this is the way the pimps and hoes express their love. You dig? Once again, like I say, based on my experience, it's more sacrifice involved. Just like it's more loyalty involved between pimps and hoes, it's more sacrifice involved between pimps and hoes too. You dig? And it's just impossible. Like, think about it from a pimp standpoint. You know, anybody who has any type of appreciation for his hoes, you see this bitch going in and out on a daily basis for weeks, months, years. And she's dedicated to seeing you shine. She's dedicated to shining with you. You dig? And then for the pimping to, in turn, make sure that the bitch is all right. If she has kids, he's making sure that her kids are straight. If her mama needs some help, he's making sure that mama get the help that she needs. So on and so forth. You dig? Like I said, people can call it what they want, but me, I don't see that as anything else but love. Who's going to do all those things and make all those types of sacrifices for somebody that they don't love? You dig? Pimps often take bitches that might be in a fucked up situation, trying to, you know, move along in a lifestyle on their own, as we call it, renegade. You know, and a pimp will take a bitch like that and give her structure, give her stability, give her guidance, give her leadership, give her a solid foundation to build from in this game. You know, basically he's giving her everything conducive to her success. Who's going to do that for somebody that they don't love? You dig? Of course, initially, it's not a love at first sight type of thing, but as they continue in the game together and grow together and evolve together in this game, and then they go through ups and downs, they might take a fall together. Then they might bounce back from that fall together. They might go through that several times within the game before they reach a point where they just so solid in the game that they, you know, able to withstand whatever blows might come their way in the game. You dig? Because, and then they're coming together with the mutual understanding that they're the most hated individuals in the world. Like, if you think about it, black people are already oppressed. Excuse me. Black people in America generally are already being oppressed. So if you have a black man who's also a pimp, you know, pimps are seen as predators, people who just exploit women and abuse women. They often, mistake pimps as human traffickers. Pimps are just seen as the scum of the earth. Now, if anybody who has the opportunity to be around a pimp and takes the time to really get to know the pimp for who he is, despite the label on his life, they'll understand that a pimp, is no different from any other person living any other walk of life. You got good and bad preachers. You have good and bad law enforcement officers. You have good and bad government officials. You have good and bad pimps. It's just that when it's a lifestyle this hard for the government to regulate, they're gonna if one pimp makes a mistake, if one pimp does something that's contrary to the game, let's say tries to quote unquote pimp on minors, it's impossible to really pimp on a minor, because if you fucking with a minor, it's not pimping. But, like once again, for a point of reference, if a pimp tries to call himself pimping on a minor, then of course that's a terrible thing. You dig? Robbing a child of her innocence. So what the media and the government do is put a magnifying glass on that situation and blow it up out of proportion to a point that, it's creating a narrative in society's mind that all pimps are like this. You dig? Just like a white person who never met a black person before, never had the experience of different types of black people from different regions and backgrounds and so on and so forth. You dig? If they watch the news and they see all the kids in Chicago killing each other, that's gonna be the point of reference in their mind as to how all black people are. So if they meet a young black person, a young black man, and all they know of black people is what they see on the news about the youth in Chicago, then they're gonna think that all black people move in that same fashion and have that same type of outlook on life, and are just gonna be, savages with no mind. Of course, anybody like myself, I am a black man, and I've never been like that. So because of that, I know that not all black people are like that. You dig? It's the same thing with pimping and hoeing. If you were involved in the lifestyle, you would know that not all pimps are predators. Not all pimps are pedophiles. You'll actually learn that a small minority of motherfuckers in the game are on that. You dig? I'm talking about motherfuckers that's really pimps. It's a small minority that's really on that. But, it's pimping. It's not something that's seen as noble within American society. So when a pimp helps put his kids through college, that's not going to be portrayed in the media. When a pimp buys his mother a house, that's not going to be portrayed in the media. When a pimp takes a hoe that was on drugs and gets her off drugs, and she might not have had her kids might be in the system. When a pimp takes a bitch like that, gets her off drugs, gets her on track, might put her through school, helps her get her kids out the system, just does all these positive things, that's not going to be portrayed in the media. It's not going to be put in the news the same way as a pimp who killed one of his hoes, or a pimp who might have put a bitch on drugs and did some foul shit, or a pimp, like I said, who quote unquote was trying to pimp on a minor. You dig? It's controversy. Controversy sells, and I understand that. So I don't, like me myself, I don't take it personal, because I understand the nature of the beast. But basically, my whole point is, don't listen to no motherfuckers that tell you that pimps don't love hoes. Take it from me, somebody who knows firsthand the love between a pimp and a hoe. It's a beautiful thing, man. It's nothing like it in my eyes and in my mind, as far as what I know and believe. There is nothing that compares to the love between a pimp and a hoe. You dig? It's such a beautiful thing, man. So many great things come from that. And it's sad that it's to a point where a lot of, you know, I wouldn't call them hoes because hoes fuck with pimps, but you got a lot of prostitutes, a lot of renegades in the game who don't like the pimping, see the pimping in a bad light. They have bad connotations in their mind as to what a pimp is. When they think of a pimp, most bitches in the game, just like all the rest of society, most bitches in the game nowadays, when they think of a pimp, they automatically think of something negative. And a major reason for that is a lot of bitches have tried to fuck with a pimp before. A lot haven't, but then you have a lot that have. In their first experience with a motherfucker that was supposed to be a pimp, 9 times out of 10 was a bad one. You dig? Because you have that too. You have a lot of motherfuckers in the game that call themselves pimps, but they don't live as pimps. They don't behave as pimps. They don't move and groove as pimps. They don't think like pimps. They might profess that out of their mouths, but if you know the nature of a pimp and you see the way that this motherfucker moves, you'll be able to see easily that he's not the pimping. As I say all the time, the best way to identify some pimping is by his nature and his ability to do what the average motherfucker can't do. Pimps are just able to do what the average motherfucker can't do. So the average motherfucker could say they a pimp, but the average motherfucker can't move and groove as a pimp. That's just like, for instance, right? When it comes to knocking a bitch, a pimp is able to just get his point across clearly by the way that he speaks and moves, his mannerisms and his speech and his thought pattern. He's going to be able to express all of that to a bitch without her knowing what his living situation or financial situation is. She might be able to obviously tell that he's stable, he's not homeless, he's not a bum, but he doesn't necessarily have to use his situation. Like, yeah, bitch, I stay in this neighborhood and I drive these kind of cars and all my bitches got this, that, and the third. A pimp, he might use that to knock a bitch, but a pimp has the ability to knock a bitch without using all of that. Because a real pimp, he wants the bitch to choose him, not his situation. So while he may have a great situation, the pimpin' has the ability to knock a bitch just based on himself as a man and a pimp. He's going to be able to appeal to a hoe's mind like that. Now, you have a lot of motherfuckers that call themselves pimps, but they going to come with trickery. You dig? They might know that the bitch got a drug habit, so they going to use that as the common ground as far as how to connect with this bitch and appeal to this bitch and get the bitch to fuck with him. You dig? Whereas a real pimp ain't gonna even have no type of drugs in the equation. Real pimp ain't gonna do no drugs because the pimpin' is the master of himself, and the pimp ain't gonna allow something like a drug to master him. So pimpin' ain't gonna have no type of drugs involved, and he's not gonna allow that for the bitch neither. Pimpin' don't want nothing to do with no drugs. But you have motherfuckers that call themselves pimps that have a lot to do with drugs, and they might use the drugs as a tool to get this bitch. You dig? Or you got motherfuckers who may get on a bitch's line and pretend like they a trick. Pretend like they a motherfucker that want to come spend some money with the bitch. Then they'll come through. They might even give the bitch the money, date the bitch, then fuck the bitch. And then after all of that, they get to popping pimping. Yeah, bitch is pimping. You need to choose some pimping. And then the bitch end up choosing. You know, a lot of motherfuckers get a bitch like that. But see, like I was saying, those are things that anybody can do. Like anybody could see a bitch is on drugs and use those drugs to reel a bitch in. Anybody could know that, okay, all it takes to get this bitch's attention, it ain't nothing special to show this bitch some money, and then the bitch go for the money, and that's how I got up on the bitch, and then all of a sudden now I'm popping pimping. See, a pimp is able to get up on a bitch without the use of any extra shit. He's just gonna clearly simply pop pimping, and the bitch is gonna fuck with him based on that. Like I said, the pimping don't need no extra shit. That's something anybody could do, but not anybody could just pop pimping and knock this bitch. You dig? So I say all that to say, those are just a few examples. But there's a whole plethora, it's a whole world of shit that motherfuckers use to knock a bitch. Motherfuckers that call themselves pimps but aren't actually moving and behaving and thinking like pimps. You know, a lot of these motherfuckers do extra shit in order to knock a bitch. And you know, a bitch who don't know no better, she might go for it in the beginning. But because this motherfucker ain't the pimping, he's not gonna pimp accordingly on this bitch. So the situation is gonna go bad. Bitch gonna have a bad taste in her mouth about the pimping, and she's gonna have this one motherfucker who did wrong by her. She's gonna use him as her point of reference whenever she sees a pimp trying to get at her. Before she even gives him a chance to prove whether or not he's a gentleman, to prove whether or not he's really the pimping, she's not even gonna give him the time of day, because all she could think about is that one motherfucker, or maybe even two motherfuckers. She might have tried to give 2 or 3 pimps a chance, and they all did something along the same lines that wasn't pimping. You dig? So, you know, all of that adds up in a bitch's mind, and the sum total is pimps don't love hoes, pimps don't care about hoes, all they care about is they self. Pimps are selfish, they just want to exploit the weaknesses of a bitch, so on and so forth. When in actuality, pimps love hoes. They turn weaknesses into strengths, because a weak bitch won't be able to survive with a pimp. It's just impossible. A pimp who's mentally strong, that's a big contradiction, or a bad connotation, excuse me, that motherfuckers associate with the game. Motherfuckers think that pimps, you know, prey on weak bitches. Like that for a bitch to fuck with a pimp, she has to be weak. She has to come from a broken home and had to have been abused throughout her youth or throughout her whole life. She's got to be emotionally weak. She's got to be mentally weak. She's got to be a failure in life. And that's the only type of bitch that it would make sense for a pimp that's the only type of bitch that it would make sense to fuck with a pimp. But once again, like I say, if you actually involved in the lifestyle, you see that that's totally contrary. You got hoes that fuck with pimps who have college degrees, who have their own businesses, who own homes. You just got all kinds of different types of mentally, emotionally strong bitches who are successful in life and fuck with pimps. You dig? Now, I'll be honest and say that that's the minority of motherfuckers that's in the game. But nonetheless, it's out there. It's not extremely hard to find if you're involved in the lifestyle. And these are situations where I say pimps and hoes love each other. It's not an in love type of thing, like a head over heels type of thing. Like when I see you, hearts pop up in my eyes, like the little heart emoji and all that type of shit. It's not one of them googly eyed type of situations between pimps and hoes, but it's love by deeds. It's love by actions. It's love in the verb sense, not the adjective sense where we just, you know, that's another thing with squares. You dig? Squares, when they use the love word, they tend to use it in the adjective sense. You know, they use it to like describe how they feel about a motherfucker, not necessarily what they do for a motherfucker and do with a motherfucker. But see, the love between the pimping and the hoeing, it's not so much of an adjective, it's more of a verb. It's based on what a motherfucker is doing. You know, the actions that they take involving one another and for one another, for the sake of one another. You dig? So, bottom line, don't listen to the motherfucking rap songs that's talking about pimps don't love hoes and pimps don't trust hoes and all that type of shit. Pimps love hoes. That's the bottom motherfucking line. You dig? So, like, share, subscribe, comment, and stay tuned. Freeze is it. I holla.